We removed the rest of the pieces.
Okay.
Yes, most of the whole east side of the fence and the south side of the fence was all washed away from the water that has been passing through there for a number of years. Any other questions for me? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to my neighbors.
And I'd like to ask City Manager Foltz, this is a petition. Have everyone been verified on this petition?
No, we have not verified all the neighbors.
Okay.
It's the first petition I've ever seen come into the city. So I wanted you all to see it first before you give me instructions on next steps.
Do we have any other comments? Please state your name, address, please.
Luke Geske. My wife and I own Heartland Trailer Court, which is next to Hookman's. We butt up to the
You may have to speak into this a little bit.
we butt up to the storage units too, and Hookman's take a lot of the grunt of the water coming off of that property and farther south from that property, and then we take the whole, I believe it's east side, runs off through our property, down our driveway. I had to cut a ditch basically down the middle of the trailer court to divert the water to keep it from washing out from underneath the trailers. It's an issue up there. It runs off the east side onto our place. We can't mow behind those trailers because they just keep putting more rock there when it creates ditches. And it just, it keeps sloughing off. They put railroad ties there, telephone poles to try to hold it back. It still doesn't work. So my wife would like to say something.
I'm Angela Geske. The actual address is 419 Northeast 14th Street. We're in between the Pioneer Farm and Ranch property and the mini storage. We had to divert the water because it was washing right into basically one of our trailers, and the man that lived there couldn't walk into his house because it was flooded basically. So we tried to divert the water from, we took it to the back of his house in between the next property line, but now it's draining into the next person's yard. So, I mean, we were trying to make it go in between these two properties, but now it's going into their yard. And I don't know why, I mean, you act like this hasn't been talked about before, but I've been here before and this has been talked about. I mean, you're acting like it's a new issue.
Myself?
Yes.
The only time that I've heard since city commissioner is from Mrs. Hookman.
We've been here before also, but you're acting like the only person that has a problem with it is her. My husband was quoted in the newspaper, but you seem to have forgotten that.
Well, we have a lot of issues.
Yes, I understand. I just wanted to state my place.
I'm not, thank you.
Hello, my name's Dennis Biggs. I live at 1502 Jayhawk. So Pioneer sets directly to our south. Then there's a trailer park to our southwest, and then the Hookman's over here. So we're downstream. I can attest to how much water comes through that area. We moved into our home in 1992. There's a lot more water that comes through there now than used to. The only problem it's caused me in our home is I have a shop out back, and it used to regularly flood that shop. Because there's probably at least 3 foot that comes through a drainage ditch between a fence I have between my house, my property and the trailer park. But that ditch gets up to where you wouldn't want to swim in it. It's 2-3 feet deep and runs through there quick. With any rain, that's 1.5 to 2 inches or more. And it used to flood my shop. With the help of Debbie Wilson, who lived just to my south, we have got it diverted into a little stream that now runs away from there. And this year with the 2¼ inch rain, I just got about 1/2 inch in my shop. But there's a lot of water that comes through there. From me out walking around in the rain, it comes from Pioneer, it comes from the trailer park, and it just floods on through there. So there's tons and tons of water that comes.
Thank you. I just want to say that I think that when the last time the Hookmans came, we thought it was just one person. And I know you're shaking your head, but let me talk. If a group comes, that's why I asked, are you the only ones? That's when they came together as a group and said that it is a group problem. Because when it was people have come prior to this, the city attorney actually said it was an individual. I don't know if you remember that. And we actually got a letter to explain it. So we see it as an individual problem, not as a group problem, until the group actually comes together and works together and presents it to us. Does that quantify?
Commissioner Schaefer, if I
Yes.
may interrupt. You said "we," and I'm not a part of that "we." I just
Okay.
want to make that clear.
Okay, that's fine. But it was the one person that did come. I think, Mr. Martin, you sent us a letter on it. I have a copy of it. And you responded to that issue, the water issue, and it was just to that one person. So I think there was some confusion, but I'm glad you're here now, so we can move forward with it and see how it will pan out. Do you remember that, Mr. Martin?
I was getting ready to speak. I am familiar with the matter, and I have spoken with you all about it. Certainly spoken with city manager's office about it some time ago. But I would need to refresh my recollection on exactly what I stated. But I think at the time the question presented to me was, is this something that the city is obligated to address?
Yes.
And not necessarily distinguishing between is it an individual problem or a group problem, but is it a public problem for which the city is responsible, or is it a private matter? And at the time, again, subject to me refreshing my recollection on something else I could have said, I think I opined that it is certainly something that relates to the public health, safety, and welfare, and therefore would be appropriate for the city to address. But it is not something based on the facts that were made available to me at the time that I believe the city was legally required to address. That is not a commentary on whether you should or should not, just simply drainage matters inherently, as a matter of Kansas law, are not legally the city's obligation, but they can be if the city chooses to deal with those. And so I wanted to distinguish between the group, individual versus public, private.
Well, the one I remember, the letter very clearly said it was a individual matter between homeowners and a business. And I don't know if I don't have it with me, but I do have it. And that we would not be actively involved because it was an individual situation. I do remember that.
Sure, and I would expect that I use the phrase private matter between landowners, but in any event, I do think, and I think I would have had this same answer then as I do now, the city can involve itself in drainage matters, but as I look at it, are we legally obligated to? And I view my role as making sure you understand when I think you have legal exposure or have a legal obligation. And then, of course, if you do want to affirmatively act, making sure you can justify doing that. But I did conclude at the time that I did not believe the city was legally obligated, and I would certainly entertain other facts that would affect that analysis. But that's what I concluded.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I'm Don Nebelsick. I'm Kevin and Annie Hookman's, Annie's father-in-law and Kevin's father. I want to reiterate a little bit back on history that this goes back to when the mini storage units were built The Pinkies owned the house that Kevin and Annie now reside in. You folks were not on the city commission at that time, I believe, but the Pinkies came to this commission with concerns about water issues, the fencing, so on and so forth. Nothing was done at that time. The commission at that time passed, gave them the building or permit or rights to build them storage units and everything, and the people, Pinkies especially, at that time, might have been the only ones fighting it for, you know, you have a commercial property next to a residential property. And there again, I know of commercial properties that have had their fences blown down, that the city has gone to them and said, you need to put that fence back up because you're next to a residential property, and nothing's been done about this one for some reason, and I fail to understand why. Also, the drainage, they told them at that time would be a problem, and it has turned into a problem, and the city allowed them to build them storage units with closed eyes, basically. I really feel there's a responsibility on the city's part to have let that happen and make things worse. You know, there needs to be, you know, you worked with Faith Avenue. What's the difference between this one and Faith Avenue?
What was that? Did you say? I didn't hear that.
Faith Avenue.
Oh, Faith Avenue, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
You know, I hate to see this city become a city of ponds, but there needs to be something up there and done, and it goes back to doing things right in the first place, not to let Frank Jordan build an addition to the city without storm sewer in it. But that's water under the bridge, so now you have something that was created by the city commission allowing things to happen that shouldn't have been done that need to be straightened out.
So all of this water is because of one property?
It enhanced it greatly. You know, the metal roofs up there, D, and the hard surface gravel just creates more runoff way faster. You know, it's just the way it is. And when they started building those units, it kept getting worse and worse, and you had public come to the commissions and express that there was problems, and the commission just let it happen some more at that time.
Now, you made a comment about their fence being down. Did that make any difference when the fence was up?
Didn't slow anything down, no, that's why the fence is rotted away, is because of all the water, you know, and it just washed it away. Basically rotted the posts off and the boards, and it fell apart, and Kevin and Annie cleaned it up and hauled it off. Any other questions for me?
One more question. Dry river bed through there help anything? A lot of people have diverted water efficiently that way.
What do you mean? Say that again?
Like a dry river bed, you know, a decorative trench with rock and stuff that water flows through.
So we put
irrigation.
in 1.5 tons worth of rock in that levee about a month ago, and it is all in the lot to the north of me.
Well, that's not what I'm talking. I mean, professionally dug out and stuff. Has anyone looked at that?
There's something going from Wildcat to Jayhawk, there's something down in there for water to run back down to the end of Charles Road, right?
Okay, that's the kind of thing I'm talking.
That's already there, but the issue is that when the property was built, nobody took into effect the water runoff and all pervious surfaces, you know.
I know that. I'm just asking if that type of application would work.
Well, you need something to slow it down, Dee, because you need a collection area and then a drainage area coming out of the collection area, because that trough that's there right now, when it rains, it's horrible. I mean, the people, that trough comes down and dumps on Jayhawk and shoots right across the street up into the yards. You know, it just,
So what you're saying is the person that owns those rental places had a fence up, and it had to be an agreement when he built that, is that right? Is that what you're saying?
the fence that was there at that time was already there when he built them units,
Okay.
okay?
So there was no agreement that he had to have certain things done to stop the water?
Do
or
you not
anything?
know?
Okay.
And like I say, city has an ordinance that if you have commercial property beside residential, it needs to be a fence, correct?
Have we taken that to
We
Travis?
have had, this is Jane Foltz, city manager. We have had our public works director, our engineer, our inspector, code enforcement. They've all been involved in this for, what, Annie, probably a year? Over a year. And we have not had any movement on this at all, due to it being a private matter between property owners. That was the result of, I believe, months ago, not only by Aaron Martin, our city attorney, but also our engineer. Water does run downhill,
Gas.
and it doesn't run uphill. And in order to stop that much water, prior city commissions, city inspectors, city engineers, those all have seen this property at some point in time.
Commissioner Schaefer, I remember at some point, we talked about putting this on the list.
Yes.
And it is.
It is
okay.
on the list.
We now have a critical drainage ordinance that you all will pass in the next few weeks. That has gone to the Planning Commission and has been approved. And this is one of the properties that is on that
Okay.
list.
So what else is there to discuss?
I agree, why are we talking?
We're talking about this because we had a petition come to you all, and I wanted you to be aware of the situation and that the problem has not changed.
But it's on a list we're going to see shortly.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Witt, and so and that's where I was remembering our last conversation of we've got northeast drainage projects that will be going out for bid here soon, and this all working through the stormwater drainage fund, which I think Marcus has $600,000 in it right now, somewhere around there.
We
Yeah.
have a set
And
plan
then-
of how we're addressing
We have-
this, as I remember.
This is Jane Foltz, city manager. We have 4 projects right now. We have a northwest, southwest, southeast. This is in the northeast project. There are 4 major projects that are now on our list.
But we're working on our
And they are
prioritized plan,
prioritized.
yes.
Right.
This is Commissioner Witt again. So, and one thing that with having all these projects going on, I think a good thing on with this specific project we're discussing here today is have a good name for it to reference. I don't necessarily like associating it with an individual. So like with Veronica Murray's email that she sent, something like Jordan Subdivision or something like that to refer the project to, just for clarity as we're going forward in the process. And I think what we can do for these people on the petition, and this has been my mindset for it, was that it was on the list coming up with all these other projects, just to give these property owners an idea of timeline of what we're looking at. Because from my stance, it is, once we get this critical drainage area, I'm thinking the next step for this, after that drainage ordinance, is a specific study where we're able to understand the cost of the solution. And that's something also, seeing so much involvement from so many property owners, it'd be also great to have them help and be a part of the process of figuring out how much it's going to be and what sort of funding mechanisms we go forward with it. Because it does sound like there's been a lot of good effort made by all these property owners to help deal with these issues. And it's to the point now where they're at their end of the rope. So I appreciate Annie getting everybody organized. And I think the best thing the city can do next is just affirming it is it is on our list. It is at the front of our minds. It is competing with other things that are going on, but just to give them an idea of timeline and what the next steps are. So in my head, I think that's this critical drainage ordinance, and then getting to the point where this is a full engineer study to understand what the cost of solution or multiple solutions may be. So, thank you.
At what cost do we decide not to do full engineer studies? Those are extremely expensive, and we have a lot of drainage issues all over.
Right, that's what I was, this is Commissioner Witt again, wondering on cost, because my expectation for an engineer study is probably in the order of $20,000 to $30,000 is typically what they've been costing.
50 to 75.
50 to
for this
75
one.
for this one, okay. And
And that can go up,
Yeah.
depending on where we're at.
right. And so with having 600 in the account now, expecting northeast drainage is going to be 300, 350, there's going to be money to be able to do that study. So
I know, but that's why we have our list and have to
Yeah.
get our priorities.
And we
do it.
currently have our engineers working on the southeast drainage, which drains the downtown and the whole
Right.
southeast part of Abilene
Top priority.
out to the river.
Right.
So that is in the works right now.
there is one other thought as I was processing through this, and so the funding mechanism for that stormwater drainage account is so, and correct me if I get any of this wrong. For residences, it's $1.25 per water bill, but for commercial properties, it's based upon impermeable surface.
Yes, correct.
With this specific case, since we have storage units, I don't think they would have a water bill. And so are they contributing to this stormwater drainage
I'll have to look at that.
fund? So that was something to where if the funding mechanism is only coming through water bills, and there's a commercial property that doesn't have a water bill, they may not be contributing to this. So that'd be something I'd like to know.
Well, and my fear is that we rubber stamp this and say it's on the study, and what time frame are you gonna tell them? I mean, if I, as a homeowner, I don't wanna say, hey, we need some help, but we're also not saying what time frame. And as we wait maybe 1, 2, 3 years, it's just gonna get worse and worse, so. That's something to think about.
And we can't tell them a time frame without having our plan fully developed.
Right. All we can say is, you're on a list, and that pacifies people, but to what extent? And the other thing about Faith Avenue is that situation was always going back and forth from previous management. And that was the struggling things that they were dealing with, and some of that kind of speared off into this group too. So I just don't want to rubber stamp and say, yes, we will look at it, but we don't have a time frame.
This is Commissioner Witt, so I guess it's good to express what my assumption is of timeline. With having critical drainage ordinance coming up in the next month or two
In the
of
next
meetings, and then getting those bids in also to see what the status of that account will be. So where I would think we could have a potential engineer study on our agenda, I would think in the next 3 months.
6 months?
6 months, within the,
For that
with,
particular
by the end of the
property?
year.
For that group?
For that group, when we have to do southeast first?
That issue's already being studied, and so,
Then that's, where do we move next?
right, and my assumption on that project is that's gonna be probably a bonded project, to where,
Probably will.
Absolutely.
That'd be huge.
right,
Yeah, the southeast will be.
right, to where we can then use this stormwater drainage fee account as,
Just then don't
to
give
study.
false hope until we have our.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly, but that's where I'm assuming timeline-wise, whether that's realistic or not. I think that's where I'm at.
Does anyone have a question from any other further questions or comments?
I think the only thing I have left is I would like someone to visit with me about what our situation is with having a fence put up between our properties. Because I agree with Dawn, we have talked to many property owners who have commercial residences that butt up against residential residences, and they have to have barriers up. And I would like to know why I do not have to have that. Now, in his defense, I would not want to invest that kind of money into something that's going to wash away either. I understand that, but we can't enjoy our backyard. We constantly have people walking through our yard, through our backyard, all the way around. There are constantly people coming and going in there. So I personally would like to have someone visit with me and my husband about what our rights are and what can happen between the business owner and ourselves.
This is Jane Foltz, City Manager. I will have Travis Stearman, who is our city inspector and knows the code book, visit with Annie and Kevin.
Can you give us an update?
I can do that.
That way we know that things are working and
Mhm.
moving forward. Okay. Thank you. Next, cell tower ordinance. City Manager Foltz.
This is an application for a cell tower at, let me get the right address here. It's on Cottage Street, 505 Cottage. And this has been before the Planning Commission. And the cell tower owner has been before the Planning Commission. They have met all the qualifications, and there is an ordinance for you all to approve. That would probably most likely go on the regular agenda.
Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding the cell tower ordinance? Can that be on a consent agenda? Or-
It's an ordinance, so
Oh,
it would
sorry.
need to go with the regular agenda, Mayor.
That's right, I'm sorry, yes, okay. All right, next is the library budget presentation, but before they begin, there was correspondence, and I think, Steve, will you read that, please?
Yes, I will. I have concern about the proposed library budget. There's a 12.51% increase in the employee benefit line item in addition to $5,393 increase in salaries. The overall budget forecasts a 2.17 increase in revenue and a 3.19% increase in expenses. The mill levy is slightly lower at .067, but proposed property and motor vehicle taxes amount to $1,847. I would like some justification for the employee benefit increases, which are excessive, and feel like the property motor vehicle tax should be held at current levels. I realize motor vehicles are not levied, but to come out equal, there should be a reduction in property tax line. The library hasn't been open while privately owned businesses in the county have continued to operate during this pandemic. Is this a double standard? If the taxpayers are paying for the services, they should be available. There are ways to mitigate risk and still remain open.
Thank you. That was a email given to all city commissioners. Have you seen that, Trevor?
I have not. Who is that from?
Diane Miller. It was sent out at about 9 o'clock this morning. I don't know, Tim, have you seen it? And that's why I decided, I thought, since she couldn't be here, that we would read it. So, the library budget presentation, I think, who's going to give that? Is it Wendy?
This is Wendy Moulton, Library Director. I don't really have a presentation. I'm just kind of here to answer your questions. Could you repeat the numbers for the motor vehicle tax, Dee?
Okay, it says that the property motor vehicle tax should be held at a current level because it did go up $1,847. I realize motor vehicle taxes are not levied, but to come out equal, there should be a reduction in the property tax line. And do you want to address this letter, Wendy? Because I have some of the same concerns. Exactly the ones she outlined.
First, our employee benefits went up for health insurance costs only. That's the amount we calculated. Let's see.
It is 41% of your salaries. That seems really excessive. The benefits are that much.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Witt. That's what they look like for my employer at K-State. They're
41%
pretty
of your
high.
benefits? Who all are we paying for, though? You don't have that many full-time people, do you?
Well, salaries are, is that 41%?
Your benefits are 41% of your salaries. 127,000 is 41% of the 305.
We use those for capers, which I don't know how many. Kara, do you know how many?
Capers is part of that,
Capers is part of our employee benefits.
and your contribution to Capers is less than 4%, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I think I have actually that salary schedule.
It is 6. It is 6. 6.
How much?
It is 6%.
6% now for libraries?
It is now, is it not?
For you, but what is
Right.
it? Same for library employees?
Yeah. I would think theirs would
Okay.
be,
Okay, thank you.
we contribute 6%
And 7.6.
as an employee. Yeah,
well,
employees
I-
contribute 6% since the new rules
Okay,
came into
that's
place.
22%. What are you paying for employee insurance per employee?
Our total health insurance projected for next year would be $75,721.83.
How many employees is that? Is everybody covered?
No. Seven people.
7?
And those aren't all fully covered. Some of them are partly covered.
7 people? Okay.
We also have the workers' comp insurance in that.
Yeah, I would expect
Capers.
unemployment insurance, all that.
And the capers is $24,802.05.
Okay.
The thing about the on staffing, the 4-floor large library, well, the 3rd floor is this, so you wouldn't, I know you have cameras, so you really don't need anyone here. The 4th floor is for the tweens, is that right? The teens?
The 4th floor is our new technology center, so all the computers are up there for patron use, and also it's going to be a teen area when we get around to being able to have groups in the library again.
I guess I'm confused because when we went up there looking at it, we were told that it was only going to be for the teens, for them a place to go.
Yep, we want to the computers are up there, so we could be able to move a staff person without creating a new position. So instead of creating a new position, we transfer one of our circulation staff upstairs.
To get for the computers.
And we move the computers up there, otherwise there'd be too much going on for one person on the main floor to do that, so. And we hope to glass that in, so it's private. If there's a group of kids studying after school, that's part of our proposal for the teen area, is to glass that room in. So the computers are private for the people who are taking tests, and some study rooms also. We do a lot of proctoring, so that's all going to be up there as well.
Okay.
Is the library, I'm sorry.
Let me just say one thing. I had communicated that I felt like there should be a staffing review And the comment I got back was, it's always been this way. And so I really still think it's only being fair to the taxpayers to do a staff review to see where you can save positions or hours. I think that's only fair to the public. And then the other question I have, is anyone else still working from home, or is
No one-
everybody working now?
No one is working from home. We've been open to the public since the 8th, and we've also been doing curbside delivery before that. As soon as the stay-at-home order was lifted,
Okay.
we were in here doing curbside delivery, and since the 8th of June, we've been
Okay,
open to the public.
all right, thank you.
And also, as for your question about staffing survey, I think the board would probably be open to that. I don't know how much that would cost, but I don't know what numbers they would get besides how much square footage and how many employees, which is the information I've already provided. So we can certainly get a quote to find out how much that would cost.
Well, and I'm looking at Grant County, which is above the Abilene, and its population is, almost 1150 more. They have more footage, and they only have 6.5 employees. And they have more tax revenue than we do. So they're running that in a comparable with more population, more square footage, and 1.75 less employees. That's why that stands out to me, that it just doesn't add up.
And I just took the average, and to me, that says that it's pretty close. And we have more, even if we only have one more floor that we staff, but we do have to have staff on this floor to help people set up technology and things like that at times, so we don't have someone permanently on this floor. So I thought, to me, the average kind of shows that we're even maybe a little below.
But I disagree with your average, because those are towns that are not comparable to us. That's why I disagree with it.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton responds to a board, and for us to pester her
I'm not
about the numbers that the board has approved seems not quite fair to me.
Well, and I've said this before, I'm being contacted by patrons that are upset about what is being requested. And so if you don't want me to say anything from what my patrons have contacted me?
I would offer that you should respect the fact that she is representing a board,
I understand that, yeah.
and to make her justify these numbers that the board gave her just seems a little rough.
Well, she's kind of the liaison for her board, so she's the only one we have to address concerns with.
I understand that, but it's a semi-autonomous government agency, right?
Right. But all, Wendy, you have to say is, let me go back to the board and see what we can come up with. That's all.
And I think she offered that on his
Sheila's here.
salary
She's
study.
Sheila Biggs is our library board president. I think she has something to say.
Okay.
There is also a statute that says if if the property tax and the motor vehicle tax is less than last year, we give up all of our grants from the state and from the
Right.
Manhattan Library. I think we're down to the point now where we're in danger of that. And at the end of the year, this is awfully early to be trying to figure out, nobody knows what's going to happen next year.
Right.
I mean, is the library even going to be open? We have to plan like it is. We have a ton of kids, if we need to have it, if we're able to have them, and she's having a summer reading program now. But if, at the end of the year, we can shave some off, we certainly will.
Okay.
I know that we have funds at the Community Foundation And I think the board will let us, of the Community Foundation, will let us have them. It's endowed funds, so they've got there's some restrictions on it. And so, I think we're down where we can be. And still, because if we don't get those funds, I mean,
You're really going to be hurting.
we're really going to be hurting.
And I'd like to comment to Commissioner Schaefer, this information is actually supplied by Wendy. Is that correct, Wendy?
It's from the state library,
Right.
annual report.
And which you have supplied to the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
You
And
gave
that's
it- you
why
gave
I'm
that package
asking.
to them,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you gave
I'm
that
just
package.
questioning the
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
It,
So,
it just doesn't seem to click, so.
yeah. And certainly the library board has had a number of discussions on these. And, we're all passionate about the library. So we have no problems with the funds being levied, obviously. And I know some people who don't use the library, but I could turn right around and I guess say, why are you spending so much on the community center? Because I don't use the community center. But I understand that. I'm not going to do that because I obviously understand the importance of it. So, it irritates me a little bit when people say, why is there so much money spent on the library? But we have well over $1 million in assets here. This woman, and designed to go out the door to people, all over the city and the
You're
county.
going to have to talk,
Yeah.
you're going to have to talk closer. 'cause
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can't
And, Wendy's responsible for all these. And this is taxpayers' money that has bought it. So that's the program, is reading materials, research materials. I think, the library board's had lots of meetings on how to use this huge space more efficiently because there's really not enough room back in the little room, where the stacks are. When the computers were there, we had originally periodicals and biographies and, the nice little relaxation space. Well, we've had to call the police on some rowdy kids up there. Early on, I found some 10-year-old, 11-year-old kids sneaking out the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And, I mean, I don't know who designed, what architect did this, but it wasn't particularly well thought out. And we're trying to take care of that. And so we need a good place for the kids. They need somebody up there. And with the computers up there, it's able to bring the other reference materials and some of the stuff, the biographies, down here with the rest of the books. But that means one person up there, but there were two people at the circulation desk anyway, because somebody had to monitor the computers anyway. So we've just split it up. Wendy has looked and looked and looked at this staffing, and when you're looking at, and she has to have part-time people in order to make sure that we have weekends, the evenings that we are open, people here for lunch, because obviously a lot of people come at lunch because that's when they have, if you're working, that's when you have time. So you can't leave it abandoned or closed. So yeah, we've looked at this, and we talked and talked, and everybody says this is what we want. And we are willing to, when all the numbers come in and when Marcus lets us know what that total is and what we can shave off, the board is willing to do that.
Right, thank you. And I'm, as being a member of the library board, I have to, I listen that people also comment
Yes.
to
And-
us and send us emails and
Yeah, but there's,
question why it's so high.
Forward them to me.
Say
I
that
mean,
again?
forward them to me. You have no
Oh, I
business
can't-
answering them.
I can't forward off a private on our,
Well,
on
if
our
it's
city
about the
account.
library, I see no reason why you just say, hey, this isn't, we've appointed a board to handle this. So if they want to contact me, I'm okay with it.
This is Commissioner Marshall, and I appreciate you coming because regardless of what he said, it's not picking on. She is our liaison between you and her board. So I'm glad that she brought the board here because we do have to listen to the citizens. Why are my taxes going up? Things like that all the time.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you coming
yeah,
and helping her
Yeah.
because she's the only person we have talked to.
yep, yep. But we've certainly taken, we've talked and talked and looked, but the bottom line is, if we don't have that tax income from the city, we don't get other funds.
Are you putting extra computers up then?
Hmm?
Are there going to be more computers or?
Oh,
Well, I was just curious because the internet bill was so much higher if you were putting on
Oh,
more.
the phone bill's actually going up because we're getting less government funding towards the
Okay.
phone bill. We just switched over to.
It doesn't matter, I was just curious.
We do have 6 computers up there right now, but we will add some just for the teens once we get that area going. And of course, all this social distancing and staying at home has put a kind of a slowdown on how we want to create that teen area. But we want to
I
be able
thought
to have
maybe you had
computers.
to run cable to another floor or something.
Oh, no, there's already internet and wireless up there when it was constructed. It's just kind of been sitting empty for 10 years.
I was just curious about that. Thank you.
And I just want to point out that we did lower the mill levy a little, and it's, none of the library employees are getting cost of living or step increases, any salary increases next year at all. So that's how we were able to keep it from going up the mill levy.
Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, thank you.
To the library board, Commissioner Schaefer, thanks for your commitment to this. I like our library.
Okay.
And if you have any other questions, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is notice of publication 2021 budget.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Jane Foltz, City Manager. And before you is our notice of budget, the budget hearing for 2021. We are expected to do that on the 27th at 4 p.m. right here at the Abilene Public Library. The only number that we were missing when you reviewed this 2 weeks ago was the library's final budget, and we have now, Marcus has put that in at 8.220. I am happy to say that we are still in a very good spot. And Marcus, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I can touch, this is Marcus Rothschild, Finance Director for the City of Abilene. I'll just touch base on a few of the changes. I know we talked that work comp number was coming in that last time, so you will see there's about a $14,500 increase in the general fund compared to the last time we brought this to you. And then the library had the $1,835 went up. Now we did counteract that work comp number in the airport fund. Actually, there was some adjustments that had been made in our software that because I go through after we talk to you on those budget drafts, and I go page by page, number by number, and recalculate all of those. And there was actually some numbers in the airport that actually had $7,000 that we had already cleaned out of our software, and we had not trimmed that off in the state form yet. So after that $7,000, and then we did take $8,000 from the capital improvement, just the bottom line of that. That's we're looking at the future facility reserve there. We had budgeted a $20,000 carryover, and that was cut down to about $12,000, but we still have the $75,000 plugged in there for the facility reserve fund. So after all of that being said, the total, we were flat dollars. We are right now, including the library budget, showing a ad valorem tax would be up about $568. So I mean, very near to flat. So what you're seeing here is still continuing to keep us very close to flat compared to last year, dollars-wise. And it is a cut of still almost a half a mil. It's 0.486, something like that. So we're still about a half a mil cut off of our from last year, so.
Marcus, here again, someone emailed me why Recreation Commission went from 568,000 this year to almost double to 921,000.
Yeah, and that's another situation where those are not true. It shows up in this year's budget because that's the budget authority. The actual expense budget is significantly less than that. And so that's going to take into account any carryover and cash balance reserves as well. So that there is a balance right now in Recreation Commission. They have,
It's about a $300,000 carryover annually.
Annually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they have a target balance. They have to have 25% of their annual expenses that are around 150,000, and then they're saving for projects and improvements, and they can't put that in a savings account. It has to show up on the budget every single year. And so as they carry that money over every year, that increases that dollar, that budgeting authority. So it was like, I think the end of the year it was 569, and now it's like 965, or in that and so it is almost double. But they are working towards projects out there, and the only way that they can do that is by rolling that money over for special projects and capital improvement. And you would see that on their budget page if you go back and look.
Is the 2020 then have that 300,000 in there?
Very near, yes.
So
Yes, but they're not planning on spending it because their projects are slated for future years. But they have to show it.
they
Mhm.
have to show it.
Yep,
Okay.
they have to show it. It's always been a kind of I was there for almost 20 years, and that was very frustrating for me as the director because we were saving for projects, and we'd get a $250,000 project, and then it would go away, and people would go, "Where'd the money go?" Well, it went towards a special project. So that's how you save for projects that are going on within the recreation department. You know, we gave 100,000 towards the pool, 250,000 towards ball diamonds. So every year
Every year that has to come.
you have to have that, and you have to show it, and that's your budgeting authority.
Well, that answers the person's question that emailed.
I have a question from a person too, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, on the CVB, we lost a position, but we're up almost 50 grand.
So what's the question?
The CVB, why the increase if we lost a position?
We're hoping that we can bring those part-time people back.
That's what I'm-
That is our goal. Julie does not need to be running that department once this is over. We're a beautiful tourism town, and right now, she is a lone ranger in that department.
I know, that's why.
And we want to bring people back to those positions as soon as we
That was the
can.
answer I was going to be able to give.
Yeah.
I would also like to comment.
Go ahead. I didn't see you in the room,
Yes,
sorry.
oh, thank you. The other point is, I hope to apply for a grant for a project, and if we get those funds in, I want to be able to spend them, and if they're not incorporated in our budget,
Right.
we can't spend them, so
Right.
that's what that is.
All right.
Thank you. People do ask us.
Thanks.
and those are funds also that are not against the tax levy here, and her funding is coming from that transient guest tax as well, and that does include a cash forward balance of about $52,000. So those are some things that she's, looking at. They've cut some of the expenditures, but you're seeing $52,000 is budgeted as that cash forward, which is what she's hoping is still coming in from that transient guest tax after the case. And those are some things that, like she said, that she may be able to use towards some of that grant funding later as well.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions for the publication of the 2021 budget? If so, before you give your Jane Foltz report update, the governing body institute that was supposed to be in Manhattan, Kansas on, it was supposed to be July 31st and August 1st, is not going to be happening there, but they are going to go virtual. So if any other city commissioner would like to be part of the virtual, it's a governing body institute in Kansas Mayor's Conference. If you, still time to sign up. but if you do, you actually get a governing body handbook. And so if you'd like to attend, please contact City Manager Foltz. So next item is City Manager Foltz update.
Thank you. This is Jane Foltz, City Manager. The Fire Department received a $4,000 grant from the Kansas Forestry Department for portable radios, and the city will be contributing a matching fund of $4,000 as well. So that was good news. As of July 6th, that's today, 2020, 69.4% of our Abilene residents completed the 2020 census. That's above the county average of 65.4 and the state average of 65.6. The national average is 61.8. The 2020 census will determine congressional representation, inform hundreds of billions in federal funding every year, and provide data that will impact communities for the next decade. It is important that we as a community complete the census, as this is the way businesses make decisions on whether or not to come to certain communities. So I want to encourage everyone, if you have not done that, please do. It's for the good of the entire community, no matter if you're a city or a county resident. Then our sales tax receipts for June, which are from the April sales, were up 38% from last year. This is good news, and we hope that this trend continues. We are working with the county to prepare an MOU for the use of the Civic Center while the remodeling of the courthouse is being completed. The tentative dates are November 2020 to May of 2021. They will not occupy the Civic Center until after the general election. That should be on your agenda next week, the week after next. Staff continue to monitor employees and safety with a new mandate ordered from the governor. We are fortunate that the entire city staff continues to be safe and come to work getting daily work and projects completed. We continue to take temperatures, and we will be advising the use of masks when out in public meetings and others. And I made this before it was mandated, so thank you all for wearing your masks, and our staff is doing the same. The police department reported 12 calls for service, either citizen complaint or officer generated, between July 1 and 4th. So that was really good news. There were approximately 20 public educated calls, which they saw people shooting fireworks off in the streets, so they made a stop and said, please move back onto your property. So for that 4-day event, I thought that was very good news. And then staff is working on a list for the Sparks funding for the city of Abilene. These are for the COVID-19 expenses that have been incurred by the city, and the dates will be from March 1st to December 31st. 2020. Our staff has done an excellent job tracking expenses for necessary items such as PPE, technology upgrades, additional cleaning, those kind of things, and barriers for the safety of the public and our staff. So we'll be working on that this week, as the timeline is very quick. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
That said, that ends the study session for July 6th, 2020. Thank you.
Mayor, do you want the city commissioners to have these answers to the questions that you gave me?
No, I give it. Yeah.
Hey, Penny?